Welcome to the Prophecy Club. We have been, over the last couple of broadcasts, trying to answer the question, is there oil in Israel? Now, I've already covered several places in the Bible, and we're not going to cover those again. You can go back to prophecyclub.com, and you can listen to those broadcasts. Matter of fact, you can listen to broadcasts going back, a year and a half, 2 years, I don't know what it is. We've already covered Genesis 49. Now, that was when Isaac called his children together, and he prophesied to them. He prophesied some really powerful blessings. Then we covered what Moses did. Remember, just before Moses died, he called the people together, and he prophesied to them. Now we're going to go to Jeremiah, what Jeremiah prophesied about Israel. Let me explain before we get into this, and I'm going to more briefly explain it today. Hopefully we can get through the rest of the verses. That way, if I don't spend so much time explaining how I arrived at these interpretations, other than to say, I, probably like you, have the Bible on computer. When I pull up a scripture, then I push F10, it pulls up the Hebrew, the Strong's reference number, and for each Hebrew word, it gives the various meanings of that word. And as I've already explained, just like run means, well, it may be what your nose does, it may be what your feet do when they move real fast, it may be what paint does, okay, but there's several different meanings for each word. So I pull up those meanings and I choose the meaning that most closely aligns with what all of the other scriptures talking about oil going to Israel say. Now, this is not just cooking up words to say, trying to get the Bible to say something it doesn't say. As you know, I believe that King James is the inerrant Word of God. It is the only version I read from or preach from. And I think the other versions are perversions. I think that they are firewood. So I'm not trying to criticize my beloved 1611 authorized King James Version. I want to say that from the outset. I also got to give you that disclaimer. Nothing I'm saying in this radio program should be deemed an offering of a security or a solicitation for you to buy a security. Any such thing can only be done through a legal prospectus, such as a private placement document approved by the company. My statements are my personal views and opinions. They are not a legal representation or a promise. Any legal relationship, which would include a business relationship or an investment, will only be done through proper legal documents, and this radio program is not one of them. As a matter of fact, if you would like to find out about our vision, I can't discuss that on the radio. You gotta call 877-645-4772 or 877 Oil Israel. That's 877 Oil Israel or 877-645-4772, and they will send you out the appropriate documents. I also want to say something more than what my attorney said I needed to read, and that is, I think I have an idea, but I really have to say I cannot say for certain that I know the exact location or the exact depth or that I will ever get the money or that I will ever drill a well or that I will ever hit oil in Israel. Now, there you go. That's the legal part of it. Now that we got that out of the way, let's go to Bible prophecy. We're going to start with what was prophesied by Jeremiah. Jeremiah 33, verse 7. I'm going to read the King James, and then I'm going to read my version, having gone back into the Hebrew and research what the Hebrew is saying and bring that forward. Again, I'm not trying to put words into it, nor am I trying to change it, as there is a curse if you try to change anything. So I'm telling you right up front, this is not Bible. This is my understanding of it. Jeremiah 33:7, King James says, I will cause the captivity of Judah and the captivity of Israel to return, and will build them as at the first. Now, again, we're trying to answer the question, does the Bible say that there is oil in Israel? Okay, did we hear anything in that verse that says oil in Israel? No, not exactly. Now, let's go to my understanding, my interpretation. I will cause the former state of prosperity of Judah and the former state of prosperity of Israel to return, and I will build them once again. You see, when King James says captivity, the word in the Hebrew is actually talking about a former state of prosperity. Now, to us, we think captivity, we think jail, we think prison, where we are all bundled up, okay? But the way God uses that is it's wealth all bundled up, okay? Verse 8, King James, I will cleanse them from all their iniquity, whereby they have sinned against me. I will pardon all their iniquities, whereby they have sinned, and whereby they have transgressed against me. Why is that important? Because you're not going to get the blessings unless you got Jesus in your heart, and you're not going to get it if you got sin all over you. So God supernaturally just forgives their sin. Does not necessarily mean in this case that they received Jesus. As a matter of fact, I believe most of them still haven't at this point. Just like Jeremiah 50 verse 20 says, and the sins of Israel were sought for, and there were none. And the sins of Judah were sought for, and there were none found. For I will pardon whom I will reserve. In other words, he forgives who he wants to forgive, period. It's in his hand, and there are scriptures that says the whole house of Israel will be saved. So that's between God and them, and I can't get in the middle of it. All right, now let's go on over to my version of that verse. I will cleanse the whole of perversity which sinned, and forgive all their perversity by which they sinned and pulled away from me. That's pretty close. Now, let me give you an example of what the Hebrew says and my interpretation of that. First, King James, Jeremiah 33, verse 9. And it shall be to me a name of joy, a praise, and an honor before all the nations of the earth, which shall hear of all of the good that I do unto them. And they shall fear and tremble for all the goodness and for all the prosperity that I procure unto it. Okay, now, that is essentially saying that God is going to bless Israel so much that the nations are going to get afraid of Israel, and it's going to be a joy and a praise to God that he blesses them. So now we can certainly see the effects of oil in that. Now, let's go to the Hebrew. Now, this is the direct Hebrew to English and then to my interpretation. This is the direct Hebrew interpretation in English. All right, now these are just the words. This won't make a whole lot of sense. Then I'll show you how to transfer that into English to make sense, to make it understandable, okay? We're still in verse 9. Memorial, cheerful, rejoicing, ornament, all Gentile nations, earth, who hear, all good, do, startled, quiver, all goodness, wealth I give. That's the way it would sound more like in Hebrew, okay? Let me read that again. Again, each one of those. See, as I've said before, A doesn't mean anything. B doesn't mean anything. But in Hebrew, Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, all of those Hebrew letters have meaning. So each letter has a meaning. So each word is a sentence. Each sentence is a paragraph. Each paragraph is a chapter. So there's a lot deeper meaning in Hebrew than there is in English. In other words, A doesn't mean anything, but in Hebrew, Aleph means something, okay? Now, let me read those again. Memorial, cheerful, rejoicing, ornament, all Gentile nations, earth who hear all good, do settled, quiver, all goodness, wealth I give. Now, I'm going to put that into a sentence based upon what that's saying. With cheerful rejoicing, I will make a memorial or example of you before all nations. They will be startled and quiver when they see all the good that I do and the wealth and safety I give. Isn't that easier to understand? Now, let me back up. Let me read Jeremiah 33:9 again, and then I'll go directly to my interpretation. It's very similar, but it gives a deeper meaning. And it shall be to me a name of joy, a praise and an honor before all the nations of the earth, which shall hear all the good that I do unto them, and they shall fear and tremble for all the goodness and for all the prosperity that I procure unto it. Now, my version, with cheerful rejoicing, I will make a memorial or example of you before all nations. They will be startled and quiver when they see all the good that I do and all of the wealth and safety I give. It's the same, but it's a deeper meaning. Now, let's go to verse 11. I'm going to skip the first part of the verse. We're just going to do the last sentence. For I will cause to return the captivity of the land, as at the first, saith the Lord. My version, Jehovah will return your former state of prosperity in the land, as in your beginnings, says Jehovah. Verse 14, King James, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, that I will perform that good thing which I have promised unto the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. Now the question is, what is that good thing? I think the promise he's saying he will do is when Moses stood in front of the burning bush and God said, Get you up, I'm sending you into a land flowing with milk and honey. Well, they got the land, but they haven't got the milk and honey. And this is saying he is giving them the milk and honey. We believe that the milk refers to natural gas and the honey refers to yellow-colored crude oil. So, essentially, he's saying, Get you up, I'm going to send you into a land flowing with gas and oil. Now, I read verse 14, their version, King James, now my version. Lo, the day will come, saith Jehovah, when I will arise to do the good thing which I promised to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. Sounds very close. Now, let's put all of those verses together in just my understanding. See if it doesn't get you excited. See if it doesn't answer that question, is there oil in Israel? I will cause the former state of prosperity of Judah and the former state of prosperity of Israel to return, and I will build them once again. I will cleanse the whole of perversity which sinned, and forgive all the perversity by which they sinned and pulled away from me. With cheerful rejoicing, I will make a memorial or example of you before all nations. They will be startled and quiver when they see all the good that I do and the wealth and safety I give. Jehovah will return your former state of prosperity in the land, as in your beginnings, says Jehovah. Lo, the day will come, saith Jehovah, when I will arise to do that thing which I promised to the house of Israel and to the house of Judah. Now, I don't know about you, but that's exciting. That's exciting. All right, now let's go to the final areas that God began to prophesy oil in Israel. Now, Moses is prophesying to Israel. Deuteronomy 31:29 tells this is what's going on. This is the prophecy. For I know after my death you will corrupt yourselves and turn aside from the way which I have commanded you, and evil will befall you in the latter days. So if there's any question who this is speaking to, it's speaking to our generation. And it's talking about these last days when this will come to pass. And evil will befall you in the latter days, because you will do evil in the sight of the Lord, to provoke him to anger through the work of your hands. Now, we're going to jump from Deuteronomy 31:29 all the way down to Deuteronomy 32. King James says, He made him ride upon the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields, and he made him to suck honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock. Is there any oil in that scripture? Absolutely, positively there is. I mean, it just said he's going to make him suck honey out of the rock. Oh, no, Stan, that's not talking about crude oil. That's really talking about honey. Okay, well, where do we get honey? We get honey out of honeycombs. It's made by bees, but there isn't any honey that comes out of the rock other than honey-colored crude oil. Now, let me explain that for just a second. There's basically 5 colors of crude oil on the earth. Now, I mean, there's various shades of it, but 5 basic colors, okay? We got black. You notice that because they spray it on most of the roads. Then we have tea-colored. You remember old Jed was shooting at some food, and up from the ground came the bubbling crude, Texas tea. Okay, that's the reason they call it Texas tea, is because when you put it in a clear glass, it looks like tea. Okay. Then there is green, which is actually very black looking. You have to look at it with a lot of light shining on it and get the exact right reflection, but you can see a green hue coming off of it. Then there is red. Now, we saw the Deepwater Horizon by BP squirting all of the oil out in the Gulf for about 3 months back in 2010, and I actually have a sample of that oil, and that is red, and I mean as in blood red, crude oil. Then there is yellow, When you put yellow crude oil into a clear glass and set it next to honey, you can't tell the difference. It looks just like honey. Now, the reason I say that milk is probably referring to natural gas is because there was a fellow by the name of Andy Sorrell back in about 1975, in that ballpark. I can look up the exact time, date, location, everything, but don't need to for this broadcast. He drilled the deepest well in Israel, and by the way, he found yellow crude oil, but he dropped a string of pipe about 300 feet long down the well, couldn't fish it out, and had to abandon the well. But he also drilled some other shallow wells looking for natural gas, and one of them hit a small showing of natural gas, and he said it was coming out of white sand. And he said it was sand as white as table salt. So my guess is that that is the milk, as in natural gas, and honey is the yellow crude oil. So when he says, get you up, I'm going to send you in a land that flows with milk and honey, he was saying, get you up, I'm going to send you into a land that flows with gas and oil. Now let's go back and read Deuteronomy 32:13. I'll give you the direct words. I'll give you my interpretation. He made him to ride upon the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields, and he made him to suck honey out of the rock and oil out of the flinty rock. Now, the direct English words coming from the Hebrew would sound like ride, above, elevation, earth, eat, produced, field, suck, honey, craggy rock, grease, flint, compressed rock. You say, well, what does that mean? Here's the way we would say that. God will make you rise above the other nations of the earth, and to eat of a produce which is honey sucked from rock, a grease from compressed flint rock. Now let's go to verse 15. But Jeshurun waxed fat and kicked. Thou art waxen fat, thou art grown fat, thou art covered with fatness. Then he forsook God, which made him, and lightly esteemed the rock of his salvation. Oil. What? That didn't say anything about oil. Oh, yes, it did. When you go back to the Hebrew, it sounds like this. God will use deep compressed oil under pressure to grow you fat quickly. God will make your disgrace a double portion blessing from compressed rock into your deliverance. Oh, yeah. I mean, that's definitely saying oil's in Israel. That's exciting, isn't it? All right, now let's go to one single verse stuck out in the middle of Job. Now, the King James doesn't say, it gives a little hint about oil, but boy, wait till I tell you what I found in the Hebrew. King James, Job 29:6. When I washed my steps with butter, and the rock poured me out rivers of oil. I have to tell you, I got that verse by watching what Hayseed had said in his DVD. And I thought, I'll even left that out of several of the DVDs I made. I thought, that's not close enough. That's not saying oil as directly as I want it to say. So I didn't even include it. Well, when I took a little time and I went back and I researched the Hebrew, here's what it's saying. I washed my feet in milk, and compressed rock poured me out rivers of crude oil. There it is. There it is. Milk and oil, as in milk and honey, as in gas and oil. And that's in Job. Now let's go to Psalms. This is going to answer a big question. A lot of you probably have this question. Well, if there's oil in Israel, and if there's been like 513 wells drilled since 1953, and only 7 of them are producing, maybe God doesn't want Israel to ever have oil. Okay, well, there's a reason. And that brings us to the question, why is it that oil, the massive amount of oil, is not already found? If God has prophesied it to come, why hasn't it already been found in Israel? Here's your answer. It's found in Psalms 81. Well, I'm just going to, if I can, for a little bit of saving time, I'm going to go ahead and just read my version, and I'll skip the King James on this, okay? If my people had listened intelligently, and Israel had walked in my ways, and bent their knee to me, I would have turned away their enemies. The haters of Jehovah and truth would exist no more. You would eat from crude oil, and wheat and compressed honey would have been given to you. In other words, because they haven't walked in the way of their God, the covenant God, they have turned from him. He didn't give them the yellow crude oil. He didn't give them the milk and honey. He didn't give them the gas and oil yet. Now let's go to Isaiah 45:2. I will cause you to grow and be prosperous. Your land will burst open. The valve of copper will open, and a bolt of iron will open unto you. Verse 3, God will give you a double portion from a depository, from a dark secret storehouse known by God as a memorial between God and Israel. In other words, he's saying, look, to celebrate the fact that you and I are married, we got married at the base of Mount Sinai, I'm going to give you this oil. And that's part of the reason that Israel begins to turn back to God. Now we're going to go to Isaiah 58 and verse 14. Again, just my interpretation. At that time your heart will be soft toward your Lord, and I will place you above all the earth. You will eat the inheritance promised to Jacob your father. The mouth of God has arranged it. Now we're going to go to Isaiah 60 verse 5, my version. At that time your face will shine, and your heart will be startled and blessed. The wealth of the sea will be given to you, and the wealth of the Gentiles shall come unto you. Now in the last verse, it was talking about how the copper bolt or the valve will be opened. We believe that that's opening up oil to squirt out. And then it just said the wealth of the sea would be converted to you. And of course, October the 28th of 2008, they found a massive natural gas discovery about 50 miles off the coast of Haifa. And we believe that that's the fulfillment of the abundance of the sea will be converted to thee. Let's go to Ezekiel 36, verse 6. This is just the King James. Prophesy therefore concerning the land of Israel, and say unto the mountains, and to the hills, to the rivers, and to the valleys, Thus saith the Lord God, Behold, I have spoken in my jealousy and in my fury, because ye have borne the shame of the heathen. Now, verse 8, But ye, O mountains of Israel, ye shall shoot forth your branches, and yield your fruit to my people of Israel, for they are at hand to come. Now, here's my version of verse 8. Mountains of Israel, this is God saying, prophesy to these mountains. Mountains of Israel, give your blessing. Lift your fruit to my people of Israel. Release, release, and give. Now let's go to verse 10, just my interpretation. I will return the whole house of Israel. Whole cities shall rest. The destroyed will be built again. Verse 11. Increase man and beast. Bear fruit. Be settled as at your beginning, and know the Lord. So we can see that there's many reasons to believe that there is oil in Israel. Daniel 11:24. And he shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest places of the province. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil, and riches. Yea, and he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. Now, this is when the Antichrist comes in to Israel, and this is when he is accepted. Remember, Jesus said that I come in my Father's name, and you don't accept me, but there's going to be another guy come in his own name, and him will you accept. Okay, this is the Antichrist. He enters peaceably upon the fattest places of the province. Now, here's my version of that. The fattest is talking about an oil field. He shall enter securely upon the oil fields, and do what his fathers or his fathers' fathers have not done. He will distribute the wealth, spoil, and booty. Now let me explain to you 1 Kings 8:41. Solomon has just finished building the temple, and he gets down on his knees, lifts his hands, he prays, and he says, Lord, if they sin, if they go astray, bring them back and correct them. And then all of a sudden he takes this rabbit trail, and he says this, and I'm just going to go right to reading my version because we're about out of time. It says, when a Gentile, not of your people Israel, comes from a far country, heed your memorial and prays at this house, here in heaven your dwelling place, and do all that the Gentile asks of you, so all the people of the earth may fear your name and know this house was built for your name. You see, 8 months before I was asked to start an oil company to continue the vision Find Oil in Israel, I was in Israel. I was leading a group of people on a tour. Just so happens we were at the Wailing Wall, the Western Wall, and I was going to go over and pray. I had just finished making the DVD, The Prayer Closet, and I handed my camera to someone. I walked over, I got down on my knees and was praying, and they snapped a picture of me praying. And the prayer that I prayed is a prayer I've been praying for years. It has 5 points to it. So I remember the prayer. Here's the prayer. I said, Lord, give me the money and the open doors to take your name and the Bible prophecy around the globe. There you go. You see, I fit a Gentile, not a people Israel, that came from a far country that heeds the memorial, in other words, the covenant between God and Israel and between God and the Christians. And I ask him there to hear in heaven his dwelling place. And it says here, Solomon says, to do all that this Gentile asks of you. I believe that we will go to Israel. Again, I can't prove that. I want you to understand my disclaimer, okay? I can't prove it, okay? But I believe that we will go to Israel. We will find oil, and it will finance soul winning going around the globe. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your prayers and your gifts of support. Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas. God bless. Now from the Prophecy Club, some exciting opportunities for you. The next speaker at the Prophecy Club is Augusto Perez. Pastor Perez has had 44 dreams and visions and several angel visits, showing him some amazing things about the future of America. He will share as many of these dreams and visions as possible from 7 to 10:30 Saturday, January the 5th at the Prophecy Club, 2540 Avenue K in Plano. Topics are the Great Shaking, the vision of the 3 stars, the coming famine, the glory cloud, the double portion outpouring, the coming attack on the U.S., the great darkness, the super devaluation of the dollar, the appearance of a celestial body, and much more. Order the DVD End of Times at prophecyclub.com. That's Augusto Perez, Saturday, January 5th at the Prophecy Club, 2540 Avenue K in Plano, corner of Park and K behind the Whataburger. Gift of $10 at the door. Doors open at 6, speaking from 7 to 10:30. See you there! The next speaker at the Prophecy Club has been teaching Bible prophecy for over 20 years, made 27 DVDs. He'll speak on Daniel verse by verse, using 441 slides, 350 pictures, 53 maps, and 18 charts. You will better understand Daniel, and I'm talking about myself, Stan Johnson. I will answer questions such as, have the sorrows begun? What bloodline, empire, and region does the Antichrist come from? How can we recognize the Antichrist? How does the Antichrist gain control? What does he do? Who is the leopard? And what are the 9 signs of Jesus' return? 8 hours, 4 widescreen DVDs, a gift of $75 or upgrade for $30. Find out about it at prophecyclub.com or call 785-266-1112. That's Daniel verse by verse, speaking Friday, January 4th, 7 to 10:30, Saturday the 5th, 9 to noon, 2 to 5, Sunday from 9:30 a.m. to 10:15 at the Prophecy Club, 2540 K Avenue in Plano, on the corner of Park and K behind the Whataburger. Gift of $10 at the door or $20 for all the Daniel talks. See you there! If you would like to find out more about our vision to find oil in Israel, call 877-645-4772. That's 877-OIL-ISRAEL or 877-645-4772. That's 877-OIL-ISRAEL or 877-645-4772. There's no obligation. They'll send you out a free packet explaining our vision.